Hello, everyone, and welcome to GrafanaCONline 2022. My name is Raj Dutt, and I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO at Grafana Labs. It's hard to believe this is our 8th annual GrafanaCon. Our first one was all the way back in 2015. Now, the mission and the goal of GrafanaCons haven't changed over the years, although certainly the scale of them has, and a pandemic definitely changed the face of GrafanaCons. But this year, we've got a really exciting and jam-packed agenda for you. We've got over 30 sessions from 50 presenters around the world and over 15,000 registered attendees who are live streaming. Now, the goals for GrafanaCon really haven't changed over the years, and there's really two. One is we want to celebrate all of the awesome activity, be inspired by, and call out everything that's happened in the community, not just the Grafana community, but the wider open source community. We're always inspired by all the things that we see, all the use cases, all the interesting problems that people use Grafana to solve, all the interesting data that they visualize from a variety of different databases. And we really like to celebrate that at GrafanaCon. And we also hope that this is a learning experience for you, a good chance to learn and hear from other people in the community, people from Grafana Labs, to understand about what we're all doing, the projects that we're working on, so that we can take away interesting ideas, interesting rabbit holes to go down later. So welcome. I'm really excited, and let's get the show on the road. But before we do, quick thanks to our sponsor, Google Cloud. Without their help, it wouldn't be possible to put together such an awesome event. So first goal, celebrating the community. And we did a similar thing last year and the year before. We really looked back over various forums, like things like Twitter, Reddit, all over the internet. And we found really interesting examples of what people were using Grafana for. And these are generally in use cases that are outside of the norm. People normally use Grafana for things like monitoring their IT infrastructure, their servers, their containers, their Kubernetes workloads. But Grafana goes so much beyond IT operations management. So let's take a look at 10 projects that we came across over the last year since the last GrafanaCon, just to highlight some of the interesting work going on. So the first one is one that's really near and dear to my heart. It's the NASA Astra launch. And so the really cool thing about this was the words. Everyone at Grafana Labs was in shock, and we were so enamored and tickled when we heard this. Have a listen for yourself.
Recording telemetry at this time. Verified. Thank you, sir. And a reminder to all Astra personnel, control room, if you require RF data, be prepared to switch over your Grafana sources at liftoff.
Be prepared to switch your Grafana sources at liftoff. That's so cool. The word Grafana was used by the launch controller when talking to the launch team. And of course, we didn't even know that NASA was using Grafana, but pretty cool to find out. Another interesting use case comes from pretty far away from Cape Canaveral, all the way in rural Thailand. So this is a tweet from Southern IoT, and they're monitoring the water levels and water management in rural Thailand using Grafana while driving around Thailand. I guess you can see this dashboard is in his car, and they're using the Helium network to do that. So pretty cool. And again, a variety of use cases that people use Grafana for. Here's another one. We've been seeing more and more of these over the last few years. Home energy and power. So here's a tweet from Jason Cox, giving thanks to all sorts of open source contributors and projects, things like Pi Powerwall, as well as Grafana. And you can see his dashboard. He's got a really, I'd say, pretty advanced Grafana dashboard here, basically showing the energy usage of his solar system, his Powerwall, what's coming in and out from the grid, and what his home is using overall. And you can see he's got various fill options and different overrides on that graph in the top left. Some pretty advanced Grafana use there. Also using some new features on the bottom left, you'll see savings, and that's a bar chart. And you'll notice that something other than time is on the x-axis of the bar chart. So really cool to see people use the these visualization capabilities in interesting new use cases. Good job, Jason. Here's another one from Damian Myerscough. He talks about monitoring Tesla solar and Powerwall with Prometheus, and similar to what Jason did. And obviously, Damon built his own dashboard here, and you can check it out. And again, we're seeing lots of growth in sort of like the home lab, home energy use cases. And people tend to use a variety of different data sources for these things, not just things like Prometheus, but even SQL data sources, in some cases, Google Sheets. We'll get more into that. So it's not just things and servers and that people monitor with Grafana. People also monitor people. So this was a really interesting post from Amon, who has who works and has a project called I think it's called Elderly and Smart Home. I believe I might be getting the name of that wrong, but I think that's the name of the project. But Amon basically had an interesting challenge. He lived with his elderly father, and he wanted to keep track of his father's activity and make sure his father was doing okay. And so one of the ways that he did that was by installing sensors in different rooms, so he could see kind of what sort of activity his father was doing, what rooms he was in, where he was spending his time. And this is actually something that Amon works in his day job on in Germany, in sort of assisted living situations. So really cool to see Grafana being used for use cases like this. You can see it looks like InfluxDB as the backend. It's a great database. Works great with Grafana, and it's pretty useful for these kind of use cases. And this is another really interesting one. So the gentleman who is behind this story, which is actually a success story on our website, his name is Alexander Mann. And Alexander, I guess, was a pretty infatuated with gardening. He was trying to grow 14 different kinds of tomatoes, if I remember correctly. But Alexander started this company called Agritech. And Alexander is using all sorts of sensors, such as temperature, humidity, water levels, even using drones. And essentially, I believe Agritech is exposing a Grafana instance for each one of these hemp farms. And each farm gets to see data that Agritech helps them collect and manage to really help them optimize their yield and ultimately, be more productive and more profitable. And so Agritech is using Grafana in this case. It's all industrial scale. There's thousands and thousands of tons of hemp in particular that have really been helped along by this technology. And it's really cool to think that Grafana is literally in the hands of farmers, and it's helping them optimize their yield. Really awesome job, Alex. And here's another cool personal one, not industrial scale, but we're seeing more and more of these too, sort of weather, particularly with the cheap sensors that are easily available today, combining it with something like a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino. It's really easy to get these dashboards together where you can show things like temperature, humidity, air quality, and you can integrate it with other projects like Open Weather Map. So this is extremely simple to set up using all open source software. You can run it yourself, obviously, and it's pretty cool. And it's a great way to learn about Grafana also, if you're just getting started. Here's another interesting one that kind of made me laugh. You can see the image on the top right. This is a tweet from BirdBoxBot. And the tweet is, Nestbox visit frequency bucket in 2-minute windows. So you can see, and I think they have some sort of sensor on this Nest box. But whenever the bird comes in, I guess to feed the young birds, that sensor trips off. So this project is actually graphing the number of bird detections and looking at that over time. So you can kind of see the feeding activity. And it looks like this was a 100 days of code project from England. Really cool to see stuff like that. Would have never even thought about this use case. So great job, BirdBoxBot. And then back to humans. So this was a post that got a lot of play on LinkedIn late last year from Vincent. And so I guess Vincent was or is a new father and also a Grafana fan. So how could he combine two of his obsessions together with a dashboard like this? So Vincent's goal, and you can read about it in this blog, was to really track statistics about his baby and about what had happened, what was predicted to happen, the various inputs such as feeding, the various outputs. I suppose both of which were diaper related, things like time since last changed, sleeping habits, all sorts of stuff. And so Vincent did this with a variety of, I think he used less sensors, but he had a Google form, which made it pretty easy for him and his wife to kind of add data as they were caring for their newborn. And I think the interesting thing here is you can do this sort of thing from any data source that you want. So for some of these projects, they even used Google Sheets. You don't have to be an expert in time series to get started and to visualize any sort of data you can imagine. And so finally, talking about the community, I can't resist talking about one of our own Grafanistas. So as a hackathon project, which our entire software side of the company and anyone else who wants to participate does about every 3 months, as one of these hackathon projects, Ivana, who's one of our engineers, worked on this project to basically track how well her sourdough bread baking was going. So if I remember correctly, she tracked both the temperature as well as how much her sourdough bread was rising, and basically was doing sourdough monitoring. And this article got a lot of interest and recently was published as part of Make magazine. So really fun to see that, and kind of adds to all these agricultural / baking use cases that we're seeing in the community this last year. So there it is. That's some fun examples of seen in the wild of Grafana and the wider open source stack. And again, it's really fun seeing these examples, and feel free to send them to us if you find any that you think we should promote. Okay, so that's a bit of what's new with the community. I'd also like to talk a little bit about what's new at Grafana Labs. And I have to say that this last year, on a personal note, has been pretty incredible. Just from being able to get back on the road perspective, being able to meet up with colleagues, with customers, with partners. I've been in probably 6 or 7 different countries just in the last few months. Grafana Labs is a global company. We have employees on every single continent except Antarctica, which we're working on. But one of the coolest things that we did recently as a company, just about a month ago, was Grafana Fest in Whistler, Canada. And it was really a gorgeous event. And it was just incredible, to be honest, because the last time we got the company together was in late 2019, when we were about 100 people. And almost 700 people, the overwhelming majority of the company, showed up in Whistler. We flew people from all over the world. We spent 5 days together. And even though we're a remote first company, or perhaps because we're a remote first company, it's that much more important to occasionally get people together so that they can, actually raise a glass together or break bread together, sourdough monitoring included, and get to know each other. And so that was the primary purpose of Grafana Fest. And it was just incredibly energizing to meet all these people, most of which who had never met each other before. So that was a huge highlight for us in the last year. And of course, we've been working really hard on all our open source software, and open source has always been and continues to be at the heart of what we do. We recently launched Mimir, which we hope will be really successful in the open source time series backend space. And with the launch of Mimir, we complete these foundational pieces of open source software that we've been working on for the last few years, which we half jokingly refer to as the LGTM stack. So obviously Grafana itself is at the core of everything we do. We launched Loki, and Loki's doing really well and is a great complement to Prometheus. And we're seeing a lot of uptick and interest in Loki, both on the open source project and on Grafana Cloud. And then, of course, more recently, we launched Tempo, our tracing platform. And then very, very recently, we launched Mimir. So we're really committed to making these 4 open source projects, world-class and continuing to pour a lot of resources into them. And of course, besides from our own projects, we're also involved in other communities that work on projects that are in the inner orbit of Grafana Labs, you could say. And one of those projects is Prometheus, which we're really committed to. And we employ almost half of the core Prometheus team. And then, of course, Graphite, the granddaddy of time series databases, which we helped revive in 2015 and 2016 and still support. And the company has grown tremendously also. Like I said, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we were about 100 people and change. And so we've more than doubled in the last year, more than 6x'd since then, since before COVID. And we're almost 800 people around the world right now, which is absolutely insane, bonkers to think about. And then we're also hit another kind of fantastic milestone just recently. We now are over 1 million instances that we can see in the wild across Grafana, Loki, Tempo, and Mimir. And that adoption is just, at the heart of everything we do. And, we really are committed to making sure that the open source community gets tremendous value from these building blocks. And then finally, over 10 million users, that's end users that we see across both the open source community and our free cloud tier. So we're really focused on adoption, and we're really focused on not just making the LGTM stack successful, but the next arc of Grafana Labs, which we're very excited to talk about. And so to talk about the LGTM stack, as well as one of the next arcs of Grafana Labs, I'd like to welcome 2 of my colleagues to talk. The first will be Merle Krantz, who is a member of the Apache Software Foundation and a senior manager on the Grafana Cloud Engineering front-end team. And then followed by Merle will be my co-founder, Torkel, to tell you a little bit about what you've all been waiting for, GrafanaCONline. But first, over to you, Merle.
Thank you, Raj. So my name is Merle Krantz. I am passionate about open source, which is why I have been a member of the Apache Software Foundation for a couple of years now and have spent a lot of my volunteering free time with the Apache Software Foundation, also as a board member, as a treasurer. But I'm not here to talk to you about my volunteering work. I'm here to talk to you about Grafana. I am the senior engineering manager of the Grafana Cloud front-end team, and I'm here to talk to you about some of our open source milestones from the last year. And as I go through these milestones, I hope you'll notice that the GitHub repository is on each slide. It's open source, right? So if you want to go poke around the source code, participate in the discussions about how to improve things, make a pull request, drop in an issue, please drop by. That's what those GitHub repositories are there for. So the first open source project we're going to talk about, Grafana. Grafana community is huge, because there's so many things you can do with Grafana, and our users keep finding new ways to use our software. We have over 900,000 active instances of Grafana now. We're closing in on 1 million, which is really amazing. So any healthy open source community takes contributions of many sizes from many people, from little tiny bug fixes to huge, great, grand new features. And from people making their first steps in software development at all to distinguished engineers. Grafana has more than 1,700 contributors. And we even have 5 contributors who don't work for Grafana Labs, but who participate in governing the Grafana project. Over the last year, we've gotten over 500 PRs from the community. Good open source software is also easily extensible. Most of the open source Grafana contributions are with plugins. One especially cool project was the WebSockets plugin that Mike Sis blogged about in April to visualize real-time IoT data. But there are over 100 plugins in Grafana's Big Tent ecosystem. They provide integrations with both open source and commercial data sources, such as MongoDB and Splunk. Grafana Loki is the logging backend for our observability stack. There are almost 100,000 instances of Loki in the wild, and Loki has made huge strides this year. including a feature that came out with 2.4 to make it possible to scale up the deployment, to make it possible to scale Loki so that you can handle terabytes of data or even more per day with a microservices approach. Loki made 3 dot releases in the last year, including 2.5 in April that had almost 500 PRs. Now, Loki has 2 non-Grafana Labs maintainers. Here on this spot, we'd also like to give a special thanks to Red Hat for donating the Loki Kubernetes operator, which is now part of the main project. So thank you. Now we come to Grafana Tempo. Grafana Tempo is the tracing backend for our observability stack. Tempo, we made the first generally available release for Tempo last year at GrafanaCONline, this time about. And in the year since, we've put out 4 dot releases. There are 4,600 instances in the wild, and we've received more than 100 PRs over the last year, including one from Pedro Saraiva that added the entire Azure backend, and also a PR from Shilja Agavala, which added new start and end parameters to reduce the number of blocks that Tempo queries. So Mimir, we introduced Mimir this March. Mimir is the Grafana backend for metrics. And we already have, even though it just came out in March, we already have over 2,000 stars in GitHub. Mimir is the most scalable, most performant open source time series database in the world. With Mimir, you can scale up to 1 billion active series and beyond. We have years of experience running and contributing to Cortex. And through that experience, we learned a lot of things about running at a massive scale. And we combined the best of what we built into Cortex with some of those scalability and reliability features that we built from our deep experience in this area. So with the Mimir launch, we open sourced those previously commercial-only features. Particularly notable was the ability to achieve unlimited cardinality using a horizontally scalable split compactor and a blazing fast high cardinality queries through a sharded query engine. So putting all of that together now, we now have our LGTM observability stack. And yes, that was on purpose. So now that we've released Mimir, users everywhere can put together the pieces of what we think is the most powerful, most comprehensive, and most composable open source observability stack, the LGTM stack. Loki for logs, Grafana for visualization, Tempo for tracing, and Mimir for metrics. Now you might think that now we have the acronym done, that we're done. Nope, not a chance. Moving on, we have just that one more bit of open source news today. We are open sourcing Grafana on Call. Grafana on Call was launched first in Grafana Cloud late last year to enable DevOps and site reliability engineering teams to manage on-call rotations in the same place where they manage their other observability tools. Monitoring incident response from this central view helps you to resolve incidents easier within Grafana. So there was a lot of excitement last year in the community about being able to integrate these two views and put scheduling and paging right next to observability. But not every organization could use this cloud-based solution. Some organizations have security requirements or legal issues around sensitive data or limited connectivity. There's all kinds of reasons. Every business is a little bit different. So when we felt it was ready for users to run this themselves and more easy to start up, we open sourced Grafana on Call for self-managed and on-prem installations. So let's look at some of the features of Grafana on Call. With Grafana on Call, you can notify the right people the right way. With Grafana on Call, you can consume alerts from multiple sources. You can deliver those alerts based on pre-configured rules to multiple syncs. You can define different escalation policies, and you can deliver those alerts however you need them delivered. This is Grafana's big tent philosophy again, right? So you can consume alerts from Zabbix, you can consume alerts from the alert manager, from Grafana, from Elastalerts. And if none of that fits, we've got webhooks, so you can do your own little bit of glue code. There's alert storage, and then there's the on-call scheduler, which is based on iCal. And you can send those notifications that then come out of that to Slack, to Telegram. You can send them via SMS, or you can send them out via phone calls. Grafana on Call in particular has advanced Slack integration to allow your engineers to deal with alerts even without opening the web interface. So for example, you could leave a resolution note right in Slack. Grafana on Call is now available via download from GitHub, and it continues to be available in Grafana Cloud for Grafana Cloud users, both on your paid plans and in our generous free tier. And even if you choose to self-host Grafana on Call, a few of those Grafana Cloud features might be interesting for you. So you can use Grafana Cloud as a gateway to send your SMS or your phone calls. You can use Twilio. And you can use Grafana Cloud to monitor your on-call installation via its heartbeat. Now, if you're interested, please stop by our GitHub repository, look at the discussions, sign up for the community calls, maybe drop an issue or take a look at the code and drop a little PR. We appreciate everything that you have to offer. And we would love for you to join our community, because that is what open source is all about. So on that note, I do want to thank our community. The reason all of this can happen, the reason that this is so awesome is you. So thank you. And now I'm going to pass it on to Torkel, who's going to tell us a little bit more about Grafana 9.
Thanks. Yes, my name is Torkel Ödegård. I'm one of the co-founders here at Grafana Labs, and my title is Chief Grafana Officer, which means that I get the pleasure to talk at GrafanaCon and present the next major version of Grafana, which we always release like in time with GrafanaCon, and this time is no different. And I also get the chance to like talk more generally about what we've been up to and a little bit what's in store for the future. And that's kind of the agenda for today as well. So a year ago, we launched Grafana 8. This was a really big, impactful release, full of kind of new visualizations, a new alerting system, and much, much more. And we've been really busy ever since then. We have kind of done 5 of these kind of minor releases. And something we really strive for and kind of work towards is doing more and more continuous delivery of features, both to the kind of open source community, but also to Grafana Cloud. And that means that we're not holding back big features for the next major version. Instead, we try to release it as soon as possible, maybe initially behind a feature toggle before we have more chance to refine it, get feedback, and make it generally available. So that means that sort of, yeah, really big, impactful features do land in these minor releases. And I just want to kind of show some highlights from kind of what we've been up to. So one of the really big impactful things in V8 was that we launched a new alerting system. We kind of refer to it as unified alerting, because the main kind of goal of this new alerting system was a system that could integrate alert rules evaluated by Grafana with alert rules evaluated by kind of Prometheus, Cortex, Loki, and a UI where you could look at alert state, notifications, manage notifications and silence rules and everything, and have that be sort of transparent, no matter if you had a local alert rule, an alert manager, or external. So really trying to unify and integrate all these things. So that's something, a system that we have worked a lot on refining this experience, making it easier to use, making the process and to migrate to the new system more kind of more bulletproof, and also the experience of using it a little bit easier. A really impactful new change in it already, I think in 8.1, was a new map panel. We call it Geomap, and this is a core kind of bundled visualization that aimed at replacing the external plugin called World Map. And this visualization also builds on what we've learned from the World Map plugin by making more high-level abstractions of having it possible to specify multiple different types of kind of base layers, map layers, and even supporting a custom tile server. But the really cool kind of impactful architectural change is making it possible to have multiple data layers. So being able to visualize things like markers and have them be controlled by you can control color and size and even the symbol rotation and text by hooking that up to data. But the really cool thing is that you can have multiple different data layers and you can even stack them. So here's an example of the heat map layer, and then we can add another data layer, a marker layer on top of that heat map layer. And just an example of this, I saw a PR last week that added a new kind of night and day layer to the Geomap panel. And that's just a really cool example of this architecture where we can add many types of layers on top. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. One other cool, really visual, small feature we added was to the time series panel, an ability to have a single series colored line change as it kind of crosses different threshold boundaries. And you could also configure it to use a gradient scale. Just really kind of visually impactful things if you have a graph with just one series and maybe representing where you want to really clearly see when it crosses different kind of boundaries. This also works with bars and points. So another really impactful feature we added in 8.3, I think, was a feature called visualization suggestions. And this feature really tries to kind of address a core challenge in Grafana. And that's kind of finding the right visualization for your given query result and the right settings that can kind of make that visualization work for your data. So Grafana supports so many types of data sources and different use cases. This is not always that trivial. Some visualizations mainly work with time series data, or some sort of work better with data structured in a specific way. But the visualization suggestions feature, the power of this feature is that it inspects. Grafana will look at the query result and the shape of the data, like what types are there, what fields, how many, and suggest you with real kind of renderings of real visualizations, some good examples, which it also ranks and kind of tries to present you with the most suitable suggestion at the top. Anyway, this is a feature I'm excited about. I hope we can refine it over time and based on feedback from the community and make it sort of better and smarter. We also have added a new visualization in the Candlestick visualization. This is a new visualization that came out of a hackathon project. And it's really trying to sort of focus on how to visualize market and financial data. And if you want to know more about this, there's a session here at GrafanaCon this year about like a live streaming and visualizing sort of market and financial data using Candlestick and other visualizations. We have worked on the plugin kind of ecosystem and plugin management, making it easier to explore the plugin marketplace just right from within Grafana. So now you can install and explore plugins without kind of having to use the CLI tool, for example. We've also tried to improve the experiences. So if you're a plugin developer, we also worked hard on making those kind of starter plugin templates easier and better. So Usage Insights is a Grafana Enterprise feature that we did some updates to over the year, releasing something called Usage Insight Logs, a feature where all these usage kind of insights events are stored into Loki, and you can now kind of really visualize them through dashboards and look at how your Grafana instance is being used, how many dashboards are being used, how many users have been using Grafana, what's the top dashboards, top data sources. And the cool thing here, in my view, is that being able to identify like dashboards with lots of query errors or data sources with lots of query errors and the users that are seeing those query errors. So if you're an operator of a large Grafana instance, you can maybe identify that something is wrong and tell the user, but oh, I see you experienced lots of query issues in Grafana. I think I found a problem. You should have a better experience now. Anyway, I think that is really useful. So those were some highlights, some of the big kind of screenshot and demo friendly things that we have done in these minor releases. But now I really kind of want to shift over the focus to V9, which is is really kind of the culmination of all these things, and some of the things in V9 can maybe released earlier behind a feature toggle or in beta form. But yeah, there are some really new, fundamentally new, exciting things in V9. And this is a slide that highlights some of them. So we have a new sort of some updates to the navigation system, making it a little bit easier and more accessible. The new Grafana's new alerting system is now called Grafana Learning, and is now the default. We have a new search engine. We have a new heat map panel. We have some really fundamental ease of use improvements to Loki and Prometheus that really make it a lot easier to get started and using these data sources. Grafana Enterprise has a big update with the access control or RBAC feature, which is now kind of generally available, and all the different types of actions you can perform in Grafana are now supported. There's also updates to reporting. We have a new external BigQuery data source that was recently released, and lots of more things. So if you want to get the details on all this, there is a session tomorrow, a deep dive session into Grafana V9, where we'll talk and demo this at length. But I want to give you a little bit of a sneak peek at that session today. Chiefly, I want us to kind of take a look at the Loki and Prometheus query builders and the new heat map. So we're in Grafana now, we're in panel edit, and I have an empty Prometheus query here. And here I can select a metric name, or I can start with a label filter. So I can like choose which I want to start with. Actually, I want to start with labels here, and because I know that I happen to know the label name, and then the metric is only the only one metric I could select there is the right one. This looks like Grafana Live metrics. So here I can easily build a query without knowing kind of that much about the syntax. I can change this label filter to a regex, and that means I can now kind of add multiple of these labels. Let's see. There are operations I can add here. I can add like a rate function. I could add aggregation and maybe sort of group by a specific label. Yeah, this query builder supports a lot of complex interactions as well, and you can learn what all these operations are doing by looking at the information here. You can also, if you prefer using the code editor, you can do kind of changes in the text editor here. For example, divide this by 2, and those changes will be carried over into the visual builder, because the visual builder just parses the full Prometheus query and builds the visual kind of model based on that. And we do support kind of more complex kind of nested queries here as well. We'll dig into more of this in the session tomorrow. And we have a similar kind of visual query builder for Loki, which is I'm almost more excited about, because I always forget the some detail in the Prometheus or in the Loki query syntax. But now I can just like easily specify the application I want to look for logs for. I want to search for some errors here. Maybe I want to exclude something. I can just add a line does not contain. I want to exclude errors from admin users, and just look at something else here. So yeah, I can build very complex time series queries here as well, and not just log queries. It's very powerful, and I'm super excited about both these new query builders. That was that, and now I just want to give you a sneak peek at the new heat map as well. So the main thing about this new heat map is really about, so it's replacing the old heat map, which was the remaining panel we had, which was kind of using the old Angular architecture. So the new heat map is chiefly kind of using the new architecture, but also a lot more performant. It's multiple orders of magnitude faster and can render really high resolution heat maps. And that is super important, because we have been kind of collaborating with the Prometheus team, who are working on a feature called sparse histograms. This is still kind of work in progress on the Prometheus side, but it's a really exciting feature in Prometheus that can support really high resolution histograms with a lot of buckets, as you can see here. And this query, this is a real Prometheus query kind of behind this data. It's returning about 58,000 data points. But this visualization, the panel itself could support many, like hundreds or 200,000 cells and really high resolution histograms. Yeah, it also has some new display options that kind of can be powerful, but I'll go into detail on those tomorrow. So, Grafana v9 is out, and I welcome everyone to try it out and let us know what you think. Now, I want to shift over and talk a little bit about the future and the fact that I've been working on Grafana for 9 years, and my beard is not white yet, but I think it's very soon getting there. But the fact is, I'm still super motivated and excited about kind of what's to come, because I feel like there's still so much that Grafana can do better. It can be easier to use, and there are more things Grafana could do, and there are like fundamental limitations to dashboarding and many things that I think that, yeah, I want to make Grafana better at. So one of the things that I've been dreaming out and talking about also for many years is like, I want dashboards to be more dynamic, more interactive. I want the layout to be able to more easily handle conditional panels and find a better way to do kind of repeating panels by query result, not just variables where each panel still has to issue its own query. So yeah, I'm really excited about finally getting to a point where we can start exploring a new dashboard runtime that will enable a lot more dynamic interactions and powerful behaviors. For example, being able to support more drill down actions where you can kind of deaggregate data and support like nested views. So you can have nested dashboards or nested views with different time ranges. So you can drill into data without having to go to a separate dashboard. And yeah, there's a lot to explore here that makes me really excited. Other kind of more down to earth things that we are sort of already starting on and working on is improving accessibility further and also working on localization. And these are really core things that will kind of make Grafana easier to use and more accessible to a wider audience. And that's one of the biggest missions of Grafana is like, how can we make monitoring, data visualization, and observability tools easier and more accessible to a wider audience? The next thing that we're also looking forward to tackling came out of a hackathon project. So the last couple of years, we have had 3 hackathons. And these hackathons have been kind of full week, sort of company-wide hackathons, where we've encouraged teamwork across like cross-functional teams and maybe across normal team boundaries. And people can work on anything they want. New product ideas, new feature ideas, it can be anything. There's kind of no constraints here, really. And these have been very impactful. So many things you've seen in v9 and features on Grafana Cloud have come from these hackathons. And they definitely filled our backlogs for years to come. So the last hackathon, the winning team was a project called Go Get It, which kind of envisioned a more simplified storage solution for Grafana, where Grafana could store and read files directly and especially integrate with Git. So you could sort of load files or load dashboards directly from GitHub, save them back, and even open pull requests directly from Grafana. So this was really compelling and really exciting, which is why it kind of won the hackathon contest. and it gave us a lot of things. It gave us a lot of things to think about. Like, how can we make this a reality? How can we make this work architecturally? So one of the things that came out of that is like the new search engine you see in V9 is something that we decided, yeah, we need to support these kind of external file-based data stores. We really need a new search solution. So that's kind of a precursor to exploring this. But anyway, some kind of Git integration is something that we're excited to start building next after V9. We don't have all the puzzle pieces yet figure out exactly how it's going to work, but excited to tackle that. And I think that's pretty much it. I want to just end with a huge thank you to Grafana's kind of user and community and the contributors that help us so much, and also to all the teams here internally at Grafana Labs that worked so hard over this last year and on making Grafana V9 release happen today. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Torkel. Wow, looks like awesome stuff. I'm really excited about Grafana 9, particularly with all of the foundational work being done to enable the Git workflow stuff that you were talking about. I know a lot of people are just as excited about it as we are. Well, that brings us to the end of our keynote. So I wanted to thank you. And speaking of thanks, I did want to give a special thanks to our community, the same community that we're building Grafana 9.0 for, the same community that I picked from 10 examples of in the beginning of the keynote. It's just been tremendous to see the continued contributions and excitement around Grafana, around Loki, around Tempo, Mimir, and now On Call and the whole Grafana Ops strategy. So thank you to everyone that's contributed in ways both big and small. And I'm not just talking about our customers, who we're obviously thankful for, but I'm really talking about the community, which we're just honored to be at the center of mass for in this wider ecosystem. So we've got a lot of great sessions coming up over the next 4 days. And up next, we have Grafana and Grafana Loki in space. So stick around for that. Looks like an interesting session for Ted. Thanks again. Thanks for joining our keynote, and enjoy the rest of the conference.